Previously, we imported assays from the assay library and from an AspenTech formatted file, but you can also enter the assay data manually. If you have printed or digital assay data, you can enter it in manually by adding cuts, properties, and a distillation curve. There are 3 different ways you can input assay data manually depending on the type of data available: multi-cut properties, single stream properties, and backblending. The multi-cut properties option, which is the default, allows you to specify multiple cuts by their initial and final boiling points and enter properties for each cut in addition to whole crude properties. You can enter properties such as cut yield, density, viscosity, sulfur content, and many more. For properties that are not in the system, you can define your own properties. Most common crude assay data properties are available in this form by default. The Single Stream Properties option allows you to enter assay data that comprises only the distillation curve and some bulk properties such as API gravity and sulfur content. The following distillation curve types are supported: TBP, which is the default D86, D1160, and D2887. The backblending option lets you define the assay by blending product streams. This option is used when you do not have an assay for the feed crude, but you have product distillation curves available. To begin, start a new case and click the Petroleum Assays folder in the navigation pane. Click the New Assay pull-down window and select the Manually Enter option. We haven't created an assay-compatible components list, so HYSYS prompts us to create one. Select Assay Components Celsius to 850 Celsius, and let's call this assay Sample Assay 1, and make sure Multi-Cut Properties is selected. Set the number of cuts, set the initial boiling points for each cut, and Assay Management will fill out the rest sequentially. If you have additional cuts, you can fill them out after the table has been created. Once you have filled out the table, click OK to open the Input Summary table. You can see that the values you've entered for the initial and final boiling points have been added to create the columns of the table, and the properties are the rows of this table. The only required inputs are the cut yields, which can be set on a mass or volume basis. The default unit of measure in assay management is inherited from the Aspen HYSYS Petroleum Refining Unit of Measure setting, in this case, the English setting. Assay management allows you to enter values with different units than the default. For example, the default density unit is pounds per cubic foot, but our assay's density is given in API. So double-click on the standard liquid density field and change the unit to API, and then click the green check mark to accept the changes. To add additional properties, click the plus button in the final row of the table. If you want to add an additional cut, left-click where it says Click to Add Cut and enter initial and final temperatures. Once you set your cuts and properties, enter your assay data. When all of the input is complete, you can proceed to characterize the assay by clicking the arrow drop-down next to the Characterize button. Click on Match Assay Cut Properties to characterize the assay. After characterization, you can examine the results. You can now use this assay in your simulation. Let's also create a Single Stream Properties assay. Create a new assay, selecting the option to enter the data manually, and select the Single Stream Properties option. We are asked to enter data points for the distillation curve. The default is a standard 9-point distillation curve. However, we are given more points than the default of 9. Change the second data point, which currently corresponds to 5% of the product being distilled, to 4%. Then right-click to the left of the 10% data point and select Insert Row. Repeat these steps until all the distillation percentages are entered. Currently, the distillation percentages are given on a mass basis, but our data is on a volumetric basis, so change by mass to by volume. We are now ready to enter the temperatures corresponding to each distillation percentage. Either enter them manually or copy and paste them in. When done, click OK. Now let's enter the bulk properties for the stream on the Input Summary tab. I know its standard liquid density and its sulfur content, but the density is given in API, not pounds per cubic foot, so let's change its unit to API. Now that the unit is changed, enter a density of 17 degrees API, then enter the sulfur weight %. The final thing left is to enter the pure component information. When this assay was run, the light component's concentrations up to N-pentane were measured. We can enter this information on the Pure Component tab. Several components are included by default, and you can add more pure components. Click the plus icon, select the C5 paraffin component group, then select the component I-pentane. Once selected, click the green checkmark to save the change. Repeat this to add N-pentane. Now that all your components are available, specify their percentage compositions. As before, change the basis % to by volume, then either enter or paste the component percentages into the table. We are now ready to characterize the assay. Click the Characterize Assay button, and Aspen Assay Management will characterize the assay. You can now use this assay in your simulation.